with the Borg, you have a clearly intelligent being that has thousands, if not millions, of bodies, and even the way they communicate, they all speak simultaneously because they are in fact one mind. The technology that we see, the implants that we see, would be the equivalent of just a person having prosthetics, a person
life support,
improving.
even.
Yeah,
Let them
a
live
person
forever and feed and yeah.
right gives them the ability to, it'd be like, think about like the shield on that the Borg use would be the equivalent of us putting a Band-Aid on our finger. It's just something that they can do. And so to me, that makes it a much more interesting creature that the Federation would have to deal with. That the Federation now has a something unlike anything they've ever encountered before. Now, in Best of Both Worlds, I was okay with what they generally did there, even though I thought it was a step down. But I liked the idea. The Borg were still a hive mind. They just got the idea that they were going to bring Picard in. And what really crapped on the Borg for the first time was iBorg. The idea that a drone separated from the collective becomes a human. All right, that's where it fell apart.
Okay, Stuart, you haven't talked for a while.
I know. Well, one thing I want to ask the Anti-Truck and get his thoughts on is the adaptation. I mean, they can adapt to weapons pretty quickly. You would think that would spread over the entire Borg network, correct? Yeah, you would think. I know modulating shield, phaser frequencies and stuff, whatever. But that's something that's always bothered me, is that every time we run into the Borg, they are getting destroyed by phasers. They are, especially the drones. It's like, what are your thoughts on that? Because that was one of the most terrifying aspects of the Borg early on for me, is the fact that everything they do,
within minutes, is useless.
Exactly, yeah. And it's like, that's got to come to an end at some point where we run out of ideas. But yet, every time we run into the Borg and Voyager, it's like, oh, well, this section of the Borg collective didn't get the information, apparently,
Right.
So what do you think about that?
I have a huge problem with that, because this is another writing problem with the Borg, as far as the various people that have written over the years. Because, first of all, and this is interesting, and I mentioned this in my review on Best of Both Worlds, when they first battle the Borg on board a Borg cube, guess how many shots it takes before the Borg adapt to the hand phasers?
It's 3, isn't it?
Nope.
Yeah. No?
Yeah. And I apologize. It's when they actually create the chip that resets the frequency each time they fire. You remember that? I'm sure you remember that
Vaguely,
they did that.
Vaguely, yeah.
Don't they shoot the emitter thing to grab their attention, and then they...
Right. The Borg never adapt to it. They actually don't. They beam out, but the Borg never adapt to it.
Isn't that when they grab Picard?
That's the second time. The first time the Borg didn't adapt. Then the second time, keep in mind, Best of Both Worlds Part 2 is written later. And so, and this was another inconsistency. So they got the idea. Whoever came up with the concept thought, okay, the Borg can adapt to phasers, but if you change the frequency, because the Borg shields are so specific that they have to readapt. That makes a certain logical sense. So then when they come up with the idea of putting a chip in that changes the frequency every time you fire, means the Borg cannot adapt. However, then next time we see them, oh, look, they adapted to the rotating frequencies because reasons, which doesn't really make any sense. So that means that really their shields can simply adapt to a general phaser setting. But for some reason, every time they stop fighting the Federation, they're like, oh, let's just go back to generic no shields, because who cares if we lose a few? And which I don't understand that at all. I think that's some of the worst things about the Borg, is the fact that you have, for some reason, they have to readapt, when in actuality, we should, once the first encounter at Q-Who happened, phasers and photons are useless.
Yeah,
after that point, at least from ship to ship. After the first encounter on a Borg cube with hand phasers should be useless. And the funny thing is that then we go to regeneration, which, as far as broadcasting, is the last appearance of the Borg. And so this one has the least amount of excuse for violating prior Borg writing. However, The way they overcome the Borg shields in that one is literally Reed turning up the firepower on the phase pistol. They didn't do anything about remodulating frequencies. He just cranked it up. And yet, phase pistols are less powerful than a hand phaser. And yet,
they're on a different frequency though. It's a different technology. So straight away you've got a different weapon.
But it already adapted to the frequency.
But not that frequency. It's a different technology. It's a phase pistol, not a phaser.
No. In that episode, the Borg had already adapted to the phase pistol. We saw that when the two Borg got loose on Enterprise. And remember, they shot with stun, so the Borg didn't really do much. It just kind of looked, that was annoying. And so then they turned it up to kill, but by that point, they already had the force field. It only took one shot for them to adapt. Then Reed says, I can turn up output like 30% or whatever the number was. And then they shoot again, and guess what? It blows through their shields until they adapt again.
Well, it's still a finite... I mean, if you're adapting... It's okay, so, you know, in Nemesis... in the Scimitar shoots a Valdor class, the wing comes off, hits the ship, it causes ridiculous amounts of damage in one hit because the shields they're designed for energy weapons, not hull. That's what shields are. You can't have an energy field around anything for a long time that covers every frequency, every field, every strength. It doesn't work. So you have to modulate it to things. So in the Borg, there's only a certain amount of power in a body. Yes, you can add power packs, whatever, but to create a full body force field, because it's only a slight piece. But if you're adapting to a certain piece of that frequency, a certain power, if you're expecting that again, you're not going to suddenly... Like, you could argue that, okay, if they've tripled the firepower, well, they're expecting in their adaptation, 1.6 gigawatts, and they're making it by 5. Well, yeah, it's going to hit through because they're adapting to one thing. And because they know they've got unlimited Borg, okay, they don't, but they're not thinking that way. It's like I was going to say earlier, if it's one creature, losing one hair follicle means nothing. Losing a single Borg means nothing, and so if it takes a second Borg to adapt, it means nothing. So they're ready to adapt their single thing.
Unless, and this is the problem with regeneration, unless you only have about 3 or 4 Borg to start with.
But they're not thinking on normal
well, they should,
terms.
Because they're not connected to the collective at that point. It's just...
Yeah, but what a bad failsafe if they're not connected to secondary programming. I mean, you don't see them be anything apart from Borg, so you can assume they're still in Borg mode without anything else.
Right. But the thing is, we have some and the Borg, especially a Borg disconnected from the hive, we should see consistent behavior, right? So if a Borg severed, or a group of Borg severed from the collective, have pre-programmed instructions on things that they should do, which is kind of what we see in regeneration, and we see this a couple of times in Voyager, including, of course, Scorpion, because Seven was severed from the collective when they went into fluidic space. However, she still continued to...
She was another special case, though. I mean, there's always...
Well, I will grant you that they
especially programmed, especially allowed.
I'm sure the collective gave her a set of instructions before leaving, but I'm just saying that we've seen it consistent where Borg separated from the collective continue to function, but they just don't think very well. They're not.
I do think there's going to be a difference though between a general Borg. I mean, this was the Queen ship's personal Borg cube. Well, at least one of the Queen's personal Borg cubes, personal Borg spheres, that then crashed. These are theoretically picked Borg, whatever. Maybe they give them special instructions, and they know they're going to go out of time, where at time they can't interact with their own Borg straight away. So I'm sure they've all been programmed with a secondary thing. Because if just one Borg, if they fail the mission, just one Borg goes onto Earth, at that time it could still assimilate and succeed. So they're a special case contingent, and these guys are the 5 left over.
But then why? Here's a question for, and this I wish we had the writers, but they would never want to come on here.
They're always different writers, so which writers?
Well, as far as like for First Contact, this was a big problem I had with First Contact. Why didn't the Borg simply immediately start assimilating people on Earth?
Well, no, yeah, First Contact has numerous problems that we...
Yes. But I mean, especially like, because we find out that the Borg, at the time that the sphere is destroyed, beam over maybe a half a dozen Borg to the Enterprise, right?
Yeah.
And they start building a collective, and one of those, of course, was the Queen herself. And so, why not beam 1 or 2 of them to some small town in Wyoming and just start assimilating people? And within hours, you have thousands of Borg drones on the ground.
Unless bullets are as effective as they could be.
Oh, jeez, don't get the
I mean,
bullets.
I'm just saying if bullets are a hard to adapt thing, although I don't think it would be, because
And that argument's been that argument's been brought up many times on many forums, especially Trekyards. Is it possible that projectile weapons are the way to defeat the Borg? And I say no, because adapting to stopping a projectile weapon is really simple in comparison to
it's just kinetic.
a phaser.
It's kinetic energy versus energy.
No, I agree.
Energy.
I agree. I
It's
don't
all
think.
energy.
I know the reason people say that is because of the Tommy gun scene.
Yes.
And the fact that we've never seen the Borg adapt to hand-to-hand combat, as
But
far
they
as
could.
like stabbing weapons and stuff like that.
Well, they could. I mean, it's just about kinetic force.
Right.
The
and
thing
that's
is, with
the thing,
bullets,
so-
it'd just be each different caliber would work until the next caliber. It's like increasing a stun setting, like changing a formula. You know, a 50 cal bullet, they are not expecting that much mass to power ratio. So each bullet would work, each bomb would work. You'd have to incrementally change the amounts. It's like, could a Borg, if you nuked one city of Borg with an actual nuclear weapon and then nuked a second one, would all the Borgs walk out? Or is it powerful enough to go through shields? Because there must be a finite amount of power that one Borg can take. I mean, you've got to assume that like the 29th century phaser could quite happily kill any single Borg because they haven't got enough personal energy. And you've got to assume that enough phaser fire will undo a Borg's energy, because the power isn't coming from nowhere. They're being drained of power source. If you were continuously, like if you shot a Borg drone with Voyager's phaser emitter from space, there's no amount of regeneration that thing will not survive a continuous blast. That Borg will die eventually. He cannot keep up a powerful. I mean, look at the the 29th century Borg, whatever his name was, he did lose the powers of shield. There is a finite amount of everything.
Except that he was a unique Borg. He wasn't drawing from a collective, and this is where I think, because this goes back
wireless
to
power from the Delta Quadrant. I think there's a limit to that.
This is something they actually do address in Q Who, and then ignore it from that point on. Unfortunately, is that the Borg have a collective power source as well. That the Borg ship was literally healing itself, because the Borg drones were using their collective telekinetic ability to fix everything. We never see them do this again. However, which we should have seen it multiple times.
It's implied they fix the ships. I mean, it's more just like a...
Right, but in Voyager, you literally see them, let me fix this panel over here, let's move this conduit. I mean...
Well, yeah, I mean, the inside's different to the outside. I mean, the outside's plating, the inside's modules. I mean, you got to repair it differently.
Except that when they beam onto the damaged cube in Q Who, the Borg are all in their slots because they're concentrating their efforts into repair.
But there's 100,000 Borg. I mean, 80,000 doing one thing, 20 doing the other. I mean, you're thinking too small. That was one single corridor. I'm sure dozens of Borg were out walking around fixing things as well.
Data specifically says that it appears that they're using their collective. The reason that they're ignoring him, Data speculates that the reason that they're being ignored is because they're focused all their energy on ship repair.
But just those Borg, I mean...
from what they could say, all of them. But they don't, who knows how many they scanned.
Well, there's kilometers worth of interior ship there. Like, there could be other sections of ships that are...
Yeah, we obviously don't know the details of the scans.
It's such an abstract concept of a ship. Like,
but that's the beauty.
You can't understand how big it is. You can't understand how many drones. I mean, I think a sphere has like 80,000, 100,000 drones in it, or 30,000. It's one of those numbers. I mean, it's huge.
But that and that's one of the things that made the Borg truly frightening, is that you weren't you can't punch a Borg in the face any more than you could punch my thumbnail in the face. It doesn't work that way. You're punching a tiny speck, a single cell of an organism so large that you can't even comprehend it. And that they were truly ultimately frightening. Now, when they evolved into assimilating, they became the ultimate expression of communism. And I'm not saying that as a joke or to slight communism. It's absolutely true, because every Borg is 100% equal. Every Borg is treated exactly the same. Every Borg gets the exact same resources. There is no hierarchy.
Well, no, you've got 7 of 9. You've got all the 9s. You've got the.
But that's just her designation for her job assignment. She is nothing special. She is treated like every other.
Well, except she was special, because they said she picked Attica and.
Well, she was special because she was a Borg where you could actually see the curves on her body before she removed her implants. That's what made her. And she didn't have a fake arm because they wanted her to be sexy. But aside from that, she she was supposed to be just another drone that was picked for this assignment.
So
The
I
Borg,
guess what we're saying is the Borg are the biggest plot convenience in Star Trek because they can be used multiple ways by different writers to accomplish different tasks.
and that's the problem. They're so inconsistent. Because then we get to the Queen, and the Queen is just a petty bitch.
And I feel like now at the half an hour mark, which is where we tend to end the debates, we should probably start. Cause I think we summarised the argument why as to how the Borg are best and worst, but we maybe should do a separate episode on the Borg Queen specifically, because that is a whole debate, and it deals with later Borg as opposed to early Borg, because that is a radical shift. What do you think, Stuart? Because
yeah, we can call it quits there and have a different discussion with Anti-Trekker about
there is
the Queen
a part
specifically.
2, but it's not actually a part 2 because people don't watch part 2s as much.
So if you want more discussion about the Borg Queen and why I think she's a raving bitch, make sure to like this video. And
Exactly. Well, we're going to call that quits. So thank you very much, Anti-Trekker, for coming and talking about the Borg. Maybe we can
Very
merge our
interesting. I will say that was a fun perspective to hear.
It was. Maybe we can merge our Trekyards collective with the Anti-Trekker collective. So guys, go check out his channel. Lots of great information and discussions there. And then, you know.
An Anti-Trekker, how does it feel to experience your first Stuart Bad pun in person? How does it feel?
He makes fun of my dad jokes all the time on his channel.
well, here's the thing about him is that you guys on Trekyards, let me tell you something real quick. You see Captain Foley as this like kind of silly middle-aged guy who tells dad jokes, right? And you think, oh, he's such a nice guy. Okay, come to Anti-Trekker sometime. I have audio footage of him threatening to slice my face off.
The movie. Torch Face Off.
No, I mean, like, he's like, oh, do you know why? He's a complete psycho on my channel. He's told me that he's going to leave me buried for all eternity in a dead YouTube channel. This guy is a straight up psychopath. And so
buried in comments.
So don't let the kind face and the dad jokes fool you. Have you seen Dexter, the TV show? It's right here. This is Dexter at middle age.
Well, I gotta say that's Admiral Foley from the Mirror Universe that visits your channel. He just disguises himself as Captain Foley, so I take I can't be blamed for that. But guys,
we'll wait to hear my summary for the next episode. Episode.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. As always, click like, don't forget to subscribe, click the notification icon, and share this video around. Also, check out the Trekyards Facebook forum. And we have a Discord service now, so the links for all those are in the description below, so check those out.
Cool. Until next time, guys, support us on all the great platforms, and we'll be back very soon with another excellent episode. And also check out his channel. Where's down there? Check his channel. No, he's there, isn't he? Wait. I don't remember how it's
Brady Bunch. She's somewhere.
Remember the L-Cars works.
Take care.
All right. Bye, guys.